You're listening to KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas, the voice of the people, voted best radio station for music 2 years in a row by the Dallas Observer.
Did you know that KNON podcasts all of its local talk shows? KNON has local talk, each show covering your community in its own unique way. So if you missed one of our great morning talk shows, you can go back and listen to it online. We keep the shows for 2 months so you can hear everything you have been missing out on. Visit KNON.org for more information about the KNON Morning Talk Shows podcast. Also available on iTunes.
What a game! What a game!
Get off my lawn.
Jim Schutze. Jim Schutze here with Get Off My Lawn. Haven't talked to you in a week. It's good to be back, have you back. I want to talk to you about West Nile mosquito spraying. Believe it or not, that's and you may have thought that issue was behind us. It's really ahead of us. There's a lot of stuff that's being stirred behind the scenes to try to take this question of spraying pesticide from airplanes out of the hands of the public. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit in the show. I want to pick up, though, riding in here, listening to the very interesting program that preceded me here. I heard a discussion of this new golf course that the city has announced in southern Dallas in the Great Trinity Forest area, and a caller called in and linked it to the horse park and some other stuff that the city's doing. There's a point I want to make about this. First of all, the caller, his name is Robert, made the point that we have these huge sort of out-of-the-blue giveaways, and they are giveaways of vast areas of city-owned land and vast amounts of city money. We're talking tens of millions of dollars in money that has to be paid back by the taxpayers to create this horse park, which is we've talked about that here on Get Off My Lawn before. That's a facility of I think it's 400 acres of city land they're giving to these people, and they're going to build $14 million worth of stuff, and eventually it has to do with a sport called dressage. That's the thing where people wear little tuxedos and they jump their horses over hurdles and stuff, and it's not exactly what you'd call a people's sport. That doesn't make it a bad sport. I know people who do it. It's very athletic. It's in the Olympics. The point was, this is a sport, not to put too fine a point to it, that appeals to rich people. And the rich people who are behind the sport originally said, well, we're going to raise $15 million and build this thing, and we'll do the city a favor and build it on city property. As that evolved over the years, they had to revise their projection. Instead of raising $15 million, they said they were actually able to raise $0. But they wanted the city-owned land and a $12 to $14 million investment from the city in building facilities anyway. And as Robert, the caller in the previous hour, pointed out, they're getting it. And it was just, these things are just sort of announced out of the blue. I mean, you can't, you don't remember an election, I'm sure, where we said, Dallas needs to give tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions, if you quantify the land value, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of stuff to rich people. Yes or no? How do you vote? You don't remember an election like that because we never had one. These things tend to come from behind the scenes, and they just pop out full blown. The great example this week was the new golf course that we're building on city-owned land. That's what Robert called about during the previous hour. It's a big new golf course, and I'm sorry, I don't know enough about golf to describe it accurately. It's going to be designed by a famous golf course designer, and then there's a big, the Byron Nelson golf whatever you call that, tournament, contest, something. The Byron Nelson is a big deal. I hear about that in the news every year when they do it. And the Byron Nelson takes place in an area that you would expect it to, somewhere up there in rich people land. And they're saying that they're going to give this new golf course to a private group to run as a private golf course. You know, it's not like it's a public golf course. We have city-owned municipal golf courses. This ain't going to be a municipal golf course. This is a private golf course that you and I can't go on. As you can tell already from my very inept attempt to describe it, I don't know from golf. I don't know anything about golf. But I can't go out on that golf course anyway, and neither can you. And maybe you're an avid golfer and you'd like to. Well, tough luck. This is going to be a private golf course, and the big payoff for the city is that they say it will attract this Byron Nelson thing away from where it is now, already in the suburbs. I confess I hear that, and my reaction is, and then? I mean, I don't really care where they have the Byron Nelson, but why do I, as a taxpayer, want to give away tens of millions of dollars in bond money, hundreds of millions of dollars in land to a private group to have a golf course, to have something called the Byron Nelson? I don't get this pattern exactly of these enormous giveaways to small private groups who just step out of the woodwork, and the city announces it. This sounds like whining, I know, but when I drive I live in East Dallas, old East Dallas. If I drive to East Texas, the streets are way better. If I drive to North Dallas, they're way better. If I drive to the suburbs, they're way better. I went on vacation in Mexico a couple of years ago, and I realized the streets there were way better than East Dallas. We have continuing problems with flooding because we've got these 1920s storm sewers that are all full of refrigerators and pianos and who knows what. The city can't fix them. We don't have enough money. And I understand that. These things kind of build up. It's like your house, you know, stuff gets ahead of you and you have to fix it as you can. The city is pecking away at these problems modestly. Each bond issue, they take on what they can. But wait a minute. Until we fix that stuff, why are we giving away these huge resources? And the answer is always, well, it's economic development. Yeah, it's economic development for somebody. It would develop me enormously if somebody gave me $14 million. I would be economically developed beyond my wildest dreams if somebody were to hand me $14 million, but it wouldn't. I don't think it would economically develop anybody else. The question is, how does creating a dressage horse park in southern Dallas, and we're talking, if you look at the census tract areas around the proposed horse park and the proposed golf course, they're very poor, really low household incomes. I've looked at them over the years, and I want to say that median household income is like $14,000 in some of these reporting areas. And these are areas, some of them, where there's great poverty. Not all of them. I think it's easy and it's dangerous to start characterizing all of southern Dallas as bitterly poor. That's not true. There are solid middle-class areas. There are rich people in southern Dallas. Southern Dallas is a varied and interesting area like the rest of the city. But it's true that most of the area around these proposed giveaways, that area is very poor. So the argument is that creating this dressage horse park and this private golf course is going to be of economic benefit to these poor areas around them. So I want to ask you, and call me up. Maybe you can answer this question. I'm at 972-647-1893. This is Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn, otherwise known as
Get Off My Lawn.
972-647-1893. Call me up if you know about this. My question is, how does it help the poor areas around these facilities to create a horse park where people jump over hurdles wearing tuxedos, or the golf course where they have the Byron Nelson golf tournament. So you will have, if you create these things, I think it's probably true, that you'll have a lot of wealthy people driving through southern Dallas, driving through these neighborhoods to get to these things. Now, do we think that money will fall out of their cars?
What's your name?
Do we think that they will shower money out of the windows? Exactly how will the development of these things help anybody in the surrounding area? How does a horse park breed other kinds of development, or the golf course? And there are reasonable, some people will argue, well, there will be hotels and motels developed around it. Let me pause. I've run on long enough, and let me ask, maybe Brad, who's called on line 2, has got an idea about this. Brad, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Hey, I don't think it develops the inner city very well. What it does is it lets the big developers come in and take land. It pushes the poor out of their neighborhoods. Because they don't let them come in and work there. They don't teach them how to golf. They don't bring the kids in from the neighborhoods. And most of these centers, once they build them, they're not trying to help the people there. They're just taking the cheap land and redeveloping it. And then what happens is they buy it up for peanuts. They then build strip malls and neighborhoods for gated communities. And they take the best land. That's the thing. They always get the best land. The cities themselves think, oh, we're not getting a tax base out of this. So we want tax base. And what happens is that eventually they just give it away to some big developer that says, yeah, I'll build 500 units for the poor. He builds it so far away from wherever he's developing that the people can't even go there. They can't get to it. There's no bus line where he puts it. It doesn't help them at all.
Well, Brad,
500 units, though.
Yeah, and Brad, I absolutely agree with you. It raises this question of what you mean by improving an area. What is an area? An area is people. You got people living there.
Neighborhood. We're going to call it a neighborhood. It's not just an area; it's an actual neighborhood,
full of human beings.
It has a name.
Yeah.
A lot of if you ask people in the neighborhood, they have a name for their neighborhood. It's Cedars, it's this, it's that. It's uptown. When you go to Oak Cliff, the people have been they've been moved around so much. It's just South Oak Cliff.
Well, and in the previous hour, Robert, the caller, referred to Thomas and Hall, State Thomas, some used to be called Short North Dallas, was full of people, neighborhoods, institutions, clubs.
Block after block.
And so that was improved by erasing it, by pushing all those people out. And putting in much fancier new buildings. Is that improvement?
They didn't even talk about where the people went that got displaced, that had no money.
There's never a mention. Hey, Brad.
Never mentioned it.
Brad, thank you for calling. Let me jump to Jim, who's also on the line. Jim, are you still there?
Oh, sure. Good morning.
What are your thoughts, Jim?
Well, I grew up in Oak Cliff. And that area where they're proposing to put this is in an area that has never been really developed, except that they're going to sandwich this in between the McComas Bluff landfill for, I guess, some nice aromas that they want, and then the Ranger River floodplain.
Right.
So on that side of 45, there's really nothing, and you're limited by those two factors as to what you can even do there. So it's, and I haven't even heard any comment environmentally about tearing down part of the Trinity Forest there.
They're not. They say they're not doing that. They're not cutting down any trees. There's huge environmental remediation that they have to do. The city apparently has to do that anyway because of toxic waste buried there.
Right. Okay. But then on the west side of 45, there's a fair amount of blank land before you actually get to any neighborhoods that they can develop. If they throw enough money at it, they can develop an infrastructure to support this. But just to stick the golf course out there by itself with no hotels, no restaurants, and so on and so forth. Of course, that goes nowhere. But if they throw enough money at it, they buy the land or get the land cheap enough, then they can develop all of this infrastructure to support it. The question, I mean, it really doesn't make sense to me, even with an infrastructure. Why in the world would you put it way out there, so far away from downtown, hotels, airport, so on and so forth? Just doesn't really add up, you know.
Well, Jim, I thank you for calling, and I want to get to this point of, it's why I brought this up, of what does add up, of what's really going on. Thanks for calling, and
You bet.
Hope to hear from you again.
Thanks. Take care.
I attended the briefing where the horse park thing was discussed. And it was very interesting. It's not a full city council meeting. It's in a smaller room called the briefing room. And you got all the city council members sitting there at kind of like folding tables in a big circle. And then the city staff gets up and they give them PowerPoint presentations, on the screen, and explain things to them. So they were explaining about the horse park deal. It was a very interesting thing happened. During most of these briefings, they're boring, and so the city council members are sitting there on their iPhones and their tablets, and they're talking, and they're walking around schmoozing and whispering with the staff. They always have a big spread there of coffee and rolls and fruit. Not for the public. The public has to sit behind a fence over at one end of the room in the peanut gallery. But they have a very nice spread there for the council and for the staff. And every once in a while you'll see the council kind of scanning out in the peanut gallery to see if there's anybody there worth noticing. They like to keep track of somebody who walks in. But the rest of the time, they're kind of preoccupied, and the city staff is up there doing their presentation. And I'll explain this in a little more. We've got a break coming up in a bit, and I'll explain this a little more when we come back. This is Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn. I want to paint this scene for you at the briefing where they talk about the horse park. I think it explains a lot. We'll see you in a bit.
This is Gilda from the Wednesday Morning Blues Crew, and I'm here to invite you to the KNON Blues Diva Showcase Sunday, December 9th at Port David's Pub. I'll be performing with my band, the Gilda Medina Band, along with a talented cast of amazing blues women featuring Miss Marcy and her Texas sugar daddies, Blue Lisa, and the Big D Playboys, Andrea Dawson, Brittany Yates, Javelin, Lady Lotion, and Sugar Mama. Short Stack from Blue Mondays will be your hostess. The legendary Henderson's Chicken will be providing a free fried chicken dinner. It's a party for your ears and a party for your belly. This is an early show with doors at 5 and music at 5:30. It's an early show ending at 9 p.m. Tickets are at KNON.org, Henderson's Chicken Outlets in Dallas, Fair Park, and Lancaster, Bill's Records, and Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie. Port David's Pub is located at 1313 South Lamar in Dallas. Blues Divas Showcase Sunday, December 9, 5 p.m. at Port David's Pub. This is a KNON benefit event.
Do you love polka music? Do you have a big collection of polka music you'd like to play on the radio? KNON has the perfect opportunity for you. North Texas Polka Radio, KNON's Polka Radio Show, is now seeking a new DJ. Think you have what it takes for a great polka radio show? We'd like to hear from you right now. Go to KNON.org and click Contact the Station for more information. You can also send in a list of 25 songs with song title and artist to KNON 5353 Maple Avenue, Suite 200, Dallas, Texas 75235. Attention, Dave Chaos. Help us keep polka alive on community radio in Dallas-Fort Worth. That's KNON.org or KNON 5353 Maple Avenue, Suite 200, Dallas, Texas 75235. Attention, Dave Chaos. Send your application today.
Tune in every Saturday morning for KNON Speak Up Saturdays. Speak Up Saturday starts at 7 a.m. with an expanded church information and forum hosted by Reverend Marion Barnett, a news and politics show for you. Then at 9 a.m., it's the Workers' Beat hosted by Gene Lance, sponsored by the CWA, a show for workers' rights. At 10 a.m., the Dallas Observer presents Jim Schutze, Get Off My Lawn with the Other Side of the News. Wrapping up Speak Up Saturdays at 11 a.m. is Lambda Weekly with David Taffet, the longest-running LGBTQ talk show in the country. Be sure to tune in every Saturday morning to Speak Up Saturdays right here on KNON 89.3 FM, the voice of the people.
Jim Schutze back with Get Off My Lawn. We're talking about the golf course that the city is giving away to a private group with this strange promise that it's going to attract the Byron Nelson. I'm so far behind the curve. I don't know. I don't want to attract the Byron Nelson. I don't care about it. But apparently if you're a golfer, this is very, very important.
Yeah, okay, Jim, this is David from the next show. I was listening to you on the way in, and I'm shocked. You missed part of the story.
Yeah, I think I missed a lot of it.
Who announced that the Byron Nelson was going to move to South Dallas? The mayor, not the Byron Nelson.
Yeah.
The Byron Nelson's held out in Las Colinas.
Right.
And they stay at the Four Seasons Hotel. Do you really think Four Seasons is going to be building a hotel on South Loop 12? I don't think so.
Right, right.
Do you think that these golfers are going to drive 20 miles to get to their luxury hotel? It's not 20 miles,
Right.
but about 10, 12 miles to downtown is the closest nice hotel. That golf tournament's not moving to South Dallas.
Yeah.
That's just something that the mayor threw in as, maybe we can get this back from Irving.
And plus, if it moved to South Dallas, what you can help me with this? Is the Byron Nelson like the New World Order or something?
No, Byron Nelson's one of the national golf tournaments. It's not on the level of the Masters, but it's on it's on the national tour, and it really is a big deal. And it would be great if it moved into the city as opposed to being out in the suburb.
Right.
It would be good for the city.
Okay. I'm very out
but
of
they
it.
didn't. They didn't say they're moving.
But maybe they will. Maybe they will. Or maybe Santa Claus will transfer his operations from the North Pole.
I live in Oak Cliff. I love the Audubon Center that's down there. I'm a big South Dallas promoter, but nobody said they're going to be moving.
And if they did, maybe you can help me with this. Let's say that it all comes true. We build the dressage horse park, and we have the Byron Nelson. Mm-hmm. And the people who like those things will drive through southern Dallas to get to them. How will it help the areas?
It'll create some jobs because there'll be caddies on the golf course. There'll be a golf store and a restaurant at the golf course, and people will be working there. They'll open some strip centers around there. There'll be a few jobs. There'll be some economic development. Shopping centers.
Oh, strip shopping malls.
Yeah.
I thought you meant gentlemen's clubs.
No. That would be for Clint.
Okay.
Over here. No, but it'll develop a little bit of business. I'm not saying that this development won't develop some other things.
Right.
But the big thing that the mayor promised or used as the hook.
Right.
They never said that.
Yeah, and you would think they would have the Byron Nelson guy there saying,
exactly.
Absolutely, we're doing it.
We're looking for a new location, and that's it. They're not.
These things are so bizarre in the way they come about. That's what gets me. And what I was going to get into, I mentioned it in the, I can see I'm never going to get to West Nile Spray. What I was going to get into is the scene at the hearing where they proposed it. Because we have to take a little responsibility on ourselves for how these things come about. So the council's sitting there at the briefing, and they're giving them the PowerPoint about I'm talking about the horse park now, the horse park. And the councils, they're all on their tablets and their iPhones, and they're schmoozing and not paying much attention. Two ladies come in and sit in the peanut gallery. One of them's Margaret McDermott Cook, who's a very prominent heiress, who's been involved in the Trinity River Project and the bridges, the Calatrava bridges, and the other's Gail Thomas of the Dallas Institute. They walk in and sit down. All of the African American Southern Dallas council members practically get up and salute. Von Seal Hill is just beside herself, waving and toodalooing at them. Dwayne Caraway is almost saluting. In other I've been at meetings where Margaret McDermott Cook has come in and Von Seal Hill has stopped the meeting and said, I think I need to announce that we have a very distinguished visitor here. That's what you usually do for an office holder. The Southern Dallas council members are absolutely in the thrall of these people. And Margaret McDermott Cook and Gail Thomas are central to the people who are pushing for the dressage horse park and so on. It so happens that that group, represented mainly through the imprimatur of the Dallas Citizens Council, is the only source of campaign money in this town. They write the only checks. And so I don't know if that's it. I don't know if there's kind of a social climbing thing or something, but they're very, very, they have this great power over the council generally, but especially the Southern Dallas council members. So this stuff of giving them parks and so on doesn't really come out of the blue. It comes from the representation.
I'm all
of
for parks, but you know what I'd like to see? I live right next to Keast Park. The soccer fields, the baseball fields are always packed. Always. I'd love to see more of those, and they're a little bit cheaper to build. I'd love to see more of those. They're always used. Of course you need parks.
You do have a lot more people who play baseball than do dressage.
I know how to play baseball. I'm not even quite sure what dressage is. I'd love to do dressage, I guess.
Tom, on line one, maybe you can help us straighten this out. Tom, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still. Hey, it's great to have you on at a later hour where you can get sleep in a little bit.
Me too.
That's what I'm talking about. I saw you comment about that when you hours have changed. Do you remember the Tom Hicks and the Perot's that received the same benefits down there at the American Airlines Center? And I'm not so sure that Mark Cuban wasn't involved in that giveaway program also.
Yes.
Where we had a perfectly good stadium at Reunion Arena and that the taxpayers built and they knocked it down.
Yeah, and
what was that all about?
And as Laura Miller pointed out when she was mayor, they will not. The city can't collect any taxes on that whole area for decades. All of the tax money that normally goes into the general fund goes back into the pockets, basically, of those developers. And all around there, you see all kinds of private sector development going on. That's a hot area. So there are lots of other people who didn't have to get those tax breaks in order to develop. They wanted in anyway. So, what is the point in giving away money to that small set? There was a program at the time when that was being considered called the Fair Share Program. And its purpose was to see that the minority community would benefit as well from this, in terms of jobs and so on. That the last analysis I saw said that the Fair Share Program came to nothing, to naught.
What else is new?
Yeah, except that the lady who put it together, Kathy Neely, wound up with her own suite at American Airlines, her own luxury suite at American Airlines Center. Now, I don't know the exact terms of that suite. There's some controversy over whether or not she paid for it. Since then, the IRS has jumped into it. There's a lawsuit over it. There's a lot of dispute, excuse me, and the FBI has subpoenaed records having to do with it. But, obviously the fair share thing was some kind of window dressing, and it was a fair share for somebody. But for you and me, I don't know. Tom, thank you for raising that question. I'm going to jump to Gusto on line 2. Are you there, Gusto?
Yeah, hello.
Tell me if am I mispronouncing that?
No, that's right.
Okay.
I wondered, you know what those big upturned noses are going to do when they are riding out there or golfing on the private course is going to smell that Trinity River. Yeah. In the summer, it really cooks, and it doesn't smell that good. And there's a sewage treatment plant nearby there, and the wind is blowing just from the south, probably over the 2 new amenities out there.
Yeah.
And if it's not that, they're going to be swatting themselves with the mosquitoes on that big nose.
Yeah, yeah.
As they're, it's going to be a boondoggle, a lot worse than that raft, the whitewater deal was. That was only $1 million,
$4 million. $4 million. But anyway,
oh, was it? Well,
yeah, it was 4. Yeah,
it compared to other giveaways.
Yeah, this will be huge. Now, I'm a little bit defensive about the area. There are times when that area can be very beautiful.
It's right. Not in the summer. I've been out there too. It cooks. It percolates.
Yeah, it does.
Summer,
and the sewage treatment plant is a big issue.
Yeah.
But
and you think they're spraying a lot for mosquitoes now? Wait till I get the folks out there that need a lot of mosquito protection.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's going to be everywhere.
Oh my God,
including the forest.
Yeah, they'll have the black helicopters out there spraying mosquito bombs on the whole area.
Well, that was it. I just wanted to throw that.
And thank you, and you've segued for me into the thing I wanted to talk about when we started here, which is
gift for Jim.
Thank you for which is West Nile spray. I hope you remember that last August they sprayed insecticide on us from airplanes for West Nile. It's because the Centers for Disease Control urged the city to. They said we had an epidemic. We did. The numbers are now complete on that. There were 18 people lost to West Nile, 180 human cases in the immediate Dallas area. I don't want to get into a debate about whether or not that's an epidemic. If you had a loved one who was lost, or if you had the disease yourself, it was an epidemic, and I can't imagine that we would have West Nile in the area as a threat and not do something. I can't imagine that if the Centers for Disease Control came to town and told us to do something that we wouldn't. The question is, do what? And the reason I'm bringing this up now is that there are these moves afoot behind the scenes to create a mosquito district. That's a mosquito district is a thing that goes way back in law to the 1950s. If it's created, it will take these decisions about spraying out of the public arena, largely out of the political arena, and that's the purpose that the people who want to have it created have in mind. They think we need to be ready to get those airplanes rolling again next summer and not waste time with a lot of debate about it. I think that the intentions here are all good. Everybody wants to protect human life. But the decision about how to spray and what to spray is very controversial, and this is not the time to cut it off. We have to talk about what they spray. They sprayed last year a compound called Duet. It contains in it a thing that's called, it's not the killing agent, there's an additional thing they put in it called a catalyst, which is a compound that is an endocrine disruptor. It attacks the immune systems of insects, and it's to stop them from, because insects will quickly build up an immunity to the pesticide if you don't spray this endocrine disruptor to knock down their immune systems. The problem with the endocrine disruptor is that it also disrupts the immune systems of humans, especially pregnant women and unborn children. So the spray is not without risk. I'm going to pause here and talk to Randy on line 3. Randy, were you calling me about the West Nile, or are we back on the golf course?
Well, I'll switch tracks with you and then ask you a question about the golf course on the way out.
Sure.
Or the dressage thing on the way out.
Yeah.
Well, is there a process that the citizens can get involved before the county? I'm assuming the county's making the decision. Mr. Price and his associates over there are making the decision on whether we're going to get sprayed or whether we're going to become a, what did you say it was, this certain zone?
Mosquito district, yeah.
Which I believe I read in your article that even though this chemical is banned in California, there are several places in L.A. that are declared mosquito districts, and they can spray it there.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. California has a real strong, it's called the Department of Pesticide Regulation. And I called them about this stuff that they sprayed on us, Duet, because I had been told that they had really severely curtailed the use of it. And I had a nice long conversation with their PR lady, and she said yes, and she referred me to the publications and the circulars and bulletins they put out. And you can barely... Only a professional pesticide guy with a little tank on his back and a wand can use that stuff, and he can't get near schools or anything. So they've really restricted it. But then she said, except for mosquito districts. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, in California, as in most of the country, mosquito districts have their own set of laws. They have their own politics behind them, their own history, their own constituency, and they are exempted from most of our control and most of EPA control. So when, for example, when I spoke to the county's, Dallas County's chief epidemiologist, a woman named Chung, Wendy Chung, last week, and I asked her about the stuff they sprayed, and I said, how worried are you about these endocrine disruptors? And she said, well, that was all approved by the EPA. That's another question. It's not exactly right. The EPA is not the FDA. They do not look primarily at the effects on humans. They look at the economic value of the thing for protecting crops.
Right.
But even at that, if you have a mosquito district, the EPA approval isn't all that. It's less important because the mosquito district can do what it wants to do.
Correct.
And that's what's scary about this.
Well, this is my question. You maybe should have asked her. Is she going to be in town the week they're spraying?
I bet I'm stuck here. We're going to come back to this after this break. Jim Schutze, get off my lawn. See you in a minute.
Want to hear some great Texas blues? KNON has the CD for you. KNON's Texas Blues Radio Volume 5, our latest blues compilation CD to benefit community radio, sponsored by Forever Young Records. This CD features 15 tracks and 60 minutes of great original Dallas-Fort Worth blues from Tutu Jones, Blues Boy Bo, Buddy Whittington, Andrea Dawson, Kirkland James, Sonny Colley, Johnny Red and the Roosters, the Chris Watson Band, the Two Tones, the Rough Cut Blues Band, Jeff Stone and Charlie Love, Dave Millsap, Sirloin and the Ash Kicking Machine, Michael J. and the Paul Bird Band, and JJ and the Detonators. We're only selling 1,000 copies, and it will never be reissued. Get your copy now at Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie, Recordtown in Fort Worth, and in Dallas at Bill's Records and Rewind Music. The CD is available as an MP3 download at KNON.org. All proceeds benefit community radio, KNON. For more info on Texas Blues Radio Volume 5, visit us at KNON.org. Get your copy now and hear some real Texas blues. Your ears will thank you for it.
KNON thanks you for your pledge to the recent pledge drive. Now's the time to make your pledge count. Send your pledge to KNON, P.O. Box 710-909, Dallas, Texas 75371. If you missed our pledge drive, you can still support community radio by pledging on the web at knon.org. Your pledge only counts if you pay it. KNON, Box 710-909, Dallas, Texas 75371. Be sure to put the name of the show that you're supporting on your check. money order or envelope. Questions about KNON Pledge Drive? Call 214-828-9500, extension 234.
Join the KNON Community Advisory Board. It is a great opportunity to offer your voice to the voice of the people. KNON's Community Advisory Board provides advice to KNON's Board of Directors about KNON programming decisions, community service, and policies. The role of the Community Advisory Board is solely advisory. This board meets 4 times a year on the second Tuesday of January, April, July, and October. The next meeting is January 8th, 2013 at KNON. Meetings are open to the public. If you're interested, please go to knon.org and scroll down through our events or call 214-237-3003 for more information. Deadline for applications is Monday, December 17th.
Hey, babes, take one.
Jim Schutze back with Get Off My Lawn. Give me a call, 972-647-1893. 972-647-1893. Randy, who called in the last segment, had a question we didn't quite get to. We've been talking about seemingly pretty disparate topics here: a horse park, a golf course, and West Nile mosquito spraying, but they're tied together by a central theme, which is how much do we have to say about it? What can the public do to influence these decisions? And Randy asked 2 questions. One was, is there a way for the public to vote on this matter of whether or not we should set up a mosquito district? And as I explained in the previous hour, the thing about a mosquito district is that once it's set up, there's not a lot of opportunity for the public to govern its decisions. It can make very important decisions, for example, spraying us from the air with pesticide. And Randy wanted to know, do we get to vote on that? I'm embarrassed to say that, Randy, I don't know. I'm very early on in looking into this mechanism in Texas law. And the county judge, Judge Jenkins, told me last week that he had nothing in the works in the legislature to create a district, but he was aware that there are some private entities or parties, which is probably the Dallas County Medical Association, who are exploring this. I don't know how it's done. I have a feeling it's done in Austin, and our chance to influence it is going to amount to calling up legislators. But I'm looking into that next week. The other question Randy had was about, do we get to vote on the horse park? Yes and no. I mean, what we get to vote on is who sits on the city council, and we've done that. And the council members who have the most to say about this are going to be the ones who represent the districts where this stuff will be created. The horse park and the giveaway golf course are in southern Dallas and in the Grove, and those council members, I believe, are very favorably disposed toward these giveaways. Why? I don't know. Call them up and ask them. It's Carolyn Davis, it's Von Seal Hill, it's Tanel Atkins, it's Dwayne Caraway. They like this idea. They think that creating these things in southern Dallas will be good for southern Dallas. And about the only influence I know of that you have is through those council members. Let me pause. Ann is on line 1. Ann, how are you this morning?
I'm fine.
What's up?
You know, I live in this area you're discussing. We've already had a golf course over there at Ledbetter and I-45, and seems as though it was always flooded.
Yeah.
This was back in the 60s, and it's to this day is just laying sitting.
Well, you know, Ann, that's another fascinating question. It was Sleepy Hollow Golf Course, and then before that, it was had a country club name that I can't remember. It was operating. There are lots of people who remember golfing there, and especially people who grew up in Oak Cliff. That was an important public resource. Now, Sleepy Hollow was privately owned.
Yes.
there was a guy there running it as a business, and my memory is that he was run off. It was taken away from him for so-called environmental reasons.
Well, that was during my high school years, but I can remember it being there.
Mm-hmm.
But I live there now, and I just can't see how the government will just pull something over our heads like they did, even when they bought in the prison over there below the Wilma Hutchins School.
Yes.
Even with our schools being deteriorating and stinting, nobody came to our aid at all.
But
my thing now is I need a grocery store. Right. I can't even get a grocery store. The Family Dollar sits there at Bonneville and Simpson Stewart Road. You can't get anything on the shelf because we don't have a decent grocery store. I want to see a grocery store come to my neighborhood.
Sure.
Not no horse track. I need a grocery store.
Right. And the thing is, there is a way to influence it. The most immediate way is through the city council. And for most people, it's your city council member. That's the person you have to call up.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think nobody calls them.
Oh, yeah, we call them.
Call them. But the people who really call them are the people who write the checks. And they write...
Dollar, that's the one who they listen to.
Sure.
But the vote, if it comes to where it's put before the people and people are aware of what's going on, the vote will make a difference. Because we as citizens are taxpayers.
If it were put
things
before...
of this nature should not be pulled over our eyes. We should be informed properly.
If it were put before the people, I believe who would vote for it? Nobody.
Well, I mean, I can see it improving the conditions, but right now I can't get a grocery store. What makes them think a golf course is going to come and be beneficial?
Yeah.
We can't get a grocery store.
Right.
I mean, we got motels, truck stops, truck companies, all that kind of stuff, but we cannot get a decent grocery store.
Well, Ann, thank you for calling. That's a very good point.
Thank you. I want
that's an excellent point.
councilman to hear a grocery store.
Okay, and thank you for calling. Ann makes a good point that there's a huge gap between what people need in their day-to-day lives walking around and these projects. I want to go back because I see time running out, and I want to finish this point on the West Nile thing. I think what most people think is, wait a minute, I don't want to get West Nile. And so what are you telling me? You want to preserve the mosquitoes? Is this a Mosquito Conservation Act or something? Why wouldn't we spray the pesticide? Well, you have to do the math on it. The pesticide is not free. It's not without danger. There are scientists at the University of Texas, a couple who were drawn into this last time around. One particular is a UT scientist named Andrea Gore, and she told D Magazine that the stuff that was being sprayed on us was especially dangerous to pregnant women and infants. This is a quote that she gave D about people who needed to worry about this stuff. She said, quote, "These include women who are pregnant or suspect they may be pregnant, infants and children, and anyone planning to conceive a child in the near future, both men and women." And that's because the stuff that's being sprayed has an effect on the immune systems of children. So you have to balance it. There was a really interesting presentation before the county commission last week. A gentleman named Howard Garrett, who's a well-known author, got up and told the county commissioners about sprays. Oh, I'm not thinking of the name of them, but they're organic. They're actually bacteria that you can use that get inside mosquitoes and they destroy their guts and kill them. So it's a mosquito-killing spray, but it has none of this risk of these endocrine disruptors. You can say, okay, this guy's some author in Dallas, he's pushing his own point of view, but there's a group called Citizens for Safer Mosquito Control. They've done a bunch of research, and they've found serious scientific papers from Rutgers University, from other places, backing up exactly what Howard Garrett was telling the commission last week. This isn't voodoo stuff. This is serious science. So my point is, there are choices. There are ways to control the mosquitoes that do not involve these compounds, these endocrine disruptors. There's a debate to be had about the endocrine disruptors. I talked to Dr. McAllister last week, who's with the Centers for Disease Control, and she says, okay, wait a minute. So they're endocrine disruptors. You still have to talk about the dosage and the exposure. She said that the exposure is so small that it's not going to disrupt your endocrines. She called that alarmist. And this is a serious person and a serious scientist. I'm saying there's a debate about it, but we're not having the debate. We're not hearing the evidence. All we're getting is this move to create a sort of a autonomous body that can go out there and spray whatever it wants on us, and we don't even get to be in on the debate. I'm just saying that we need to put the brakes on and say, look, what we need is more debate, more conversation. It's not that we know exactly which side is right. This is way too complicated for that. But we want to hear what the issues are. We want to hear the issues. Is there a danger from the pesticide? Is the pesticide effective? That's the other thing Garrett said. Here's a point I want to leave you with at the end of this show. After all that spraying last year, your mayor and county judge told you that they had a study from the Centers for Disease Control showing that the spraying was 93% effective. It worked. That's not true. I think they were told that. I know they were told that, but I talked to the Centers for Disease Control people who did the study. They say now, no. That was so preliminary a study, you shouldn't pay attention to it. The truth is, nobody knows if that spraying did any good or not at all. I attended a lecture last week by Dr. Wendy Chung, who's the county's chief epidemiologist. She was speaking to like 400 public health students at Brookhaven College, and she gave a big speech about what a great deal the spraying was, and she called it a courageous program and so on. And afterward, I said, did the program do any good? And she said, well, we don't know, because they started spraying when the disease was already in decline naturally. She said it would be very difficult to know if it did any good. And she said, we're waiting for the final study from the CDC, which will come out, they hope, next month. And then they'll know. So this is my point. You were told the public line, the propaganda after the spraying in August, 93% effective, killed those skeeters dead, wiped out West Nile. That's not true. They have no idea if it had any effect at all. It may have been that they started spraying when the mosquitoes were in the down cycle naturally anyway. And what Howard Garrett presented to the commissioners last week, backed up with science from Rutgers and other leading institutions in the country, was evidence that the stuff they sprayed was very ineffective. Very ineffective. Garrett was arguing there are more effective. He wasn't saying don't do anything. He wasn't saying let the mosquitoes be free. He was saying do something. Absolutely. There are a bunch of things you can do, and you can get to an ultimate point where you got to spray from airplanes. But he was saying don't spray this stuff. I've left Cerny on line 4 for way too long. I'm sorry. Are you still there, Cerny?
Of course I am.
Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Sonny? Yeah.
Sonny. I'm sorry. That's my Michigan accent, you know.
Yeah.
What's up?
Native Texas. Good morning, and you know who I am.
I do know. Yeah. There's only one Sonny.
There you go.
Good to hear from you.
Good to hear from you, and I'm glad to hear you online. That is a nice thing and a good thing for us.
You went away. Okay, go ahead.
I'm here.
Okay.
Basically, what I wanted to add is that Dallas has always been as independent as a hog on ice. We have always reinvented our own wheels.
Right.
And you know this from long history and many, many issues. It wasn't made here. It can't make any difference. It can't be real unless we come up with it.
Right. That's right. And we're not going to listen to anybody else. Right.
Gee whiz, right next door, there's a town that has an identity. They've had the same identity. They have their logo, their whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Their city saying has been the same for 150 years.
Right.
They are, Fort Worth is where the West begins.
Right.
Dallas has changed theirs how many times, and we don't even remember what the words were.
Yeah, I like the one where the East peters out. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, well, there you go. And there are so many ways to say that. But in Fort Worth, they have not had to spray for mosquitoes for decades.
Right.
They have a very solid year-round program.
Right.
That they work hard.
Right.
They use some of what Howard was talking about.
Right.
They use mosquito dunks. They work hard at keeping standing water out. They make it an ordinance that you got to remove it.
Yeah.
And they have not had to spray.
Right.
And if you go and split those numbers and identify where those, make a map, identify where the cases were, and identify where they were. Did they go out? Did they go out to the Audubon Center in the middle of the summer and go on a Trinity hike? What did they do?
Mm-hmm.
If you start identifying it, you will find there's very few cases and very few deaths in Fort Worth by comparison to Dallas.
Right.
We think we're immune. And
Right.
when we're not, oh, my Lord, we have to do something, and we have to do it right now. And
we're not going to listen to anybody else.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we're not going to learn from other people.
You would,
Gee,
yeah.
What a thought. Go down to a little town called Clute, Texas, down on the coast.
Right.
Ask them what they're doing about their mosquito problem, because believe me, they have one.
Sure.
Go look around at who's got mosquito problems and find out if they're doing anything about it, what they're doing about it. When they made us do the church ordinance, we went all over the country.
Sonny,
how we're doing it.
I'm hearing that music. Would you promise you'll call me up again?
I promise I will call you again. I promise to, let's talk sometime.
All right, good. It's good to hear from you. And this is Jim Schutze with Get Off My Lawn, saying goodbye for another week. Please don't cry. I have to go, but I promise I'll be back. Bye.
You're listening to KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas, the voice of the people, voted best radio station for music 2 years in a row by the Dallas Observer.
Did you know that KNON podcasts all of its local talk shows? KNON has local talk, each show covering your community in its own unique way. So if you missed one of our great morning talk shows, you can go back and listen to it online. We keep the shows for 2 months so you can hear everything you have been missing out on. Visit KNON.org for more information about the KNON Morning Talk Shows podcast, also available on iTunes.